in the Islamic teachings, self-reflection, indeed what in psychotherapy we would call metacognition, thinking about thinking, is regarded as really important. And of course, the month of Ramadan is the month of not just reading the Holy Quran, but reflecting upon it in a very personal way. It's about our relationship with the Quran. And when we look at Surah Rum, Surah 30, verse 8, it's quite categoric. It asks a challenging question. It says, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ? Do they not reflect upon themselves? Almost as a shock that one realizes that human beings do not engage in this metacognition, this thinking about thinking, this self-reflection. Why? Because it's transformative in its power. This is why it is so strongly encouraged. And Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam has taught that when someone fasts, the entirety of our being should be fasting. He said there should be fasting of the ears, fasting of the eyes. All aspects of our being should be fasting. Indeed, Hazrat Amir alayhi salam has gone even further. He has narrated the well-known teaching where he said there are so many people who fast, but whose share is only hunger and thirst. And there are so many worshippers whose only share of the benefit of that worship is only exhaustion. What's the difference between a person who fasts but only experiences hunger and thirst, and a person who engages in prayer but only experiences exhaustion, versus another person who may do the same external acts, but the internal is such that his or her heart is nourished by that action. The spiritual thirst is quenched. And one of the answers to this question of what differentiates these two kinds of people is when we consider the psychology of fasting. When we approach the psychology of anything, we need to look at the context of it, the practice of it, and the follow-up of it. So we notice that the beginning of the fast, just before Fajr, is the time of imsak. Often, when we think about psychology within the Islamic tradition, the Arabic terminology that is used is very powerful in unlocking the psychological secrets that they are holding. And when we consider imsak, the root verb is really about withholding. It's about retaining. It is, in a sense, about self-discipline. But in a higher sense, it's about mindfulness. It's about retaining control. It's about keeping within the parameters of our discipline. But this doesn't just apply to the imsak of food and water, because the beginning of the fast really also applies to the imsak of the tongue in terms of what we say, the imsak of the eyes of what we look at, the imsak of the heart in terms of how we relate to ourselves, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to others. This three-dimensional relationship. Modern psychology is very clear about the importance of relationships and behavioral psychology in terms of what we do, particularly with regard to what we do to other people and with other people. And so when we practice imsak of the tongue and imsak of the heart, there are many aspects of withholding the negative that often corrupts and pollutes our relationships. And this is really how the idea of imsak doesn't just apply at the beginning of the fast, but indeed heralds the method by which we are to engage in this practice throughout the fast.